Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm doing a video for Paint Couture's creative team. In today's video, I am going to be creating a French country style frame and artwork. For my project base, I'm going to be using this wooden frame that I picked up at the thrift store for about $8. I've already taken the glass out of it and the back can be taken off just like a normal photo frame. I'm going to be using Redesign's Delicate Flora. I'm dusting my mold with cornstarch. This is going to help the air dry clay that I'm going to be using to release. I'm going to work the clay into one of the designs there. This has some lovely florals and also some scrolls. I'm going to work my clay in and then I'm going to flex the mold, flip it over, and then gravity is going to help me to get my casting out. I'm then going to position it on the frame where I want it to go down the bottom, and then I'm going to cast the other design next to it. So this is basically the same design, but it's the mirror image, which is perfect for my design today. So just repeating the same process, flexing that mold and then flipping it over. And this is really the easiest way to get your clay out. I'm positioning that down the bottom, and I am going to be making another one of each of these to go up the top. And then I'm going to cast another one of the designs from the same mold, and these are going to go in the left and right corners. And again, I'm going to be casting two of each of these. So I did do quite a bit of repetition with this particular frame. And then finally, I am going to cast another one of each of these castings here, and they are just going to be going on the left and right hand side. And next, I'm going to be using Redesign's Floral Chain Mold. I'm going to dust the design that I want to use with cornstarch, and then I'm going to start working my clay just into the sections that have the smaller florals. This is going to be going around the inner center part of the frame, and I'm going to continue to cast these until I have enough for the entire outside section of that oval shape. Once I'm finished casting all of my pieces, I'm going to start gluing them down with a strong wood glue. Once I had everything glued down, I also decided to cast just the little bow from the same design that we were using for the florals in the center, and then I'm going to layer that over the top of my other castings and glue it down. I let my castings dry for several hours, and then I took Paint Couture's Crust Medium and Pinecone chalk paint. I'm going to get some of that Crust Medium out and put it in a plastic container, and then I'm going to tint the Crust Medium with Pinecone chalk paint and stir it well. I'm then going to start applying it to the frame with a paintbrush. I'm using a dabbing and stippling motion to really emphasize the lovely texture that is created when you use the Crust product. Now I've tinted it so that it will also look more authentic because I'm going to be layering paint over the top of it, and so this is going to peek through underneath, and because I've already tinted it, we've really saved ourselves another step. So I'm going to continue adding that Crust Medium all around the outside until I have the entire frame covered. I'm not really putting much on the castings themselves, however. Once the Crust Medium was completely dry, I took Paint Couture's Buttercream chalk paint and I'm going to start applying my paint over the top. You'll see sometimes I'm brushing my paint over the top of the texture, allowing it to skip certain areas, and in other sections I am really dabbing that paint in and working it into the details. So dabbing the paint is going to help create additional texture as well, and I am going to be doing 2 coats here around the entire frame. Once my 2 coats of paint were completely dry, I took Paint Couture's French Gold Heavy Metal Metallic, and I'm going to start adding it over the top of all of our castings. I'm applying it in a dabbing motion, and I did end up doing 2 coats here to get the coverage that I was after. These heavy metal metallics are so beautiful, so highly pigmented. Definitely a really wonderful product to use if you are trying to replicate antique ornate frames. So I'm going to continue adding that gold, working my way around the frame until I've painted all of the castings. If I inspire you to try any of these Paint Couture products, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. You'll find it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. I also then decided to add that French gold around the outside border of the frame. However, I did allow that paint to skip over certain areas of the texture, again just adding to that authentically aged look. When my paint was dry, I then took Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze, and I'm going to be working that glaze in around my castings and over the top of that buttercream chalk paint, and then I'm going to be using a wet wipe to pull back some of that excess. Ultimately, we want to tone that paint, give it an antiqued look, but we also want that glaze to really highlight the outside edges of the castings that we've added. Again, we're going for an antiqued weathered look. I set the frame off to the side, and now we're going to focus on the center. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer, and I'm going to dab and stipple that over the top of the back section of the frame. I'm adding this because we're going to be using this as our artwork base, and there are some metal pieces that are on this surface, so this is going to make sure that the products that I use will stick and stay there. Once that was dry, I took Paint Couture's Embossing Medium. I'm going to get some of that product out and put it in a plastic container, and then I'm going to be using Peace Mineral Paint to tint it. I'm just putting a few drops of that in there, and then I'm going to stir it well. Then I'm going to use my palette knife there, and I'm going to start adding it over the top of our backing piece that we've already primed. Ultimately, my vision for this is almost like a plaster wall, so I really do want that texture to be shown. I want to see those ridges and details, and I am really going for, again, just that weathered look. I then switched to some of the Embossing Medium without that Peace Mineral Paint in it. This is just going to create some tonal variation. I even did a few drops of the Peace Mineral Paint directly onto the Embossing Medium itself, and I just continued moving the product around until I had the whole back section covered and until I had some really nice ridged details happening there. I let the embossing medium dry completely, and then I grabbed this piece from Redesign's Lavender Mould. It is a resin piece from my stash, and I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Autumn Sage chalk paint. I'm going to focus first on the lavender stem, just adding that beautiful green over the top. I did end up doing 2 coats of this lovely color, and then once that was completely dry, I then took out Paint Couture's Purple Haze chalk paint, and I'm going to be adding that to the petals of our lavender sprig there. So I'm going to add that in and continue until I have that whole surface covered. It did only take 1 coat of this beautiful purple to get the coverage that I wanted. If you haven't heard, Paint Couture now have their own casting resin. It's called Rapid Casting Resin. It comes in the white, and it also comes in a black color as well. So it is perfect for these types of crafts. Once the chalk paint was completely dry, I took my brush that I was using with the Buttercream chalk paint, and I'm just lightly going over the top of the details of the castings, and then I did use a wet wipe to pull back some of the intensity there. It's going to highlight the details and bring in a little bit of tonal contrast. Next, I'm going to work on this little bee that's from the same Redesign lavender mold, and I'm going to be using the French gold heavy metal metallic again. I'm going over the top of the entire bee. I did 2 coats here, and then when that was dry, I used pitch black chalk paint on a small artist brush to paint in a few details. I don't need this to be perfect. We are going for a vintage look. Next, I'm going to take my light brown sugar antiquing glaze, and I'm just going to add a little bit to the dry embossing medium that we added to the back. This is going to go behind our lavender piece there, so I really want this to have an antiqued look as well. I then used a wet wipe to pull back some of that product, and I love how it's really highlighting the texture that we created with the embossing medium. When that was dry, I then took some of my pitch black chalk paint. I've got some on my paintbrush, and I'm just sort of flicking the bristles so that I'm getting a variety of spatter and speckles in the background, just to create a little bit of interest and again some age. Once that was dry, I then had to work out how much of the lavender stem I'd have to trim off. I'm then using my craft knife to cut off that excess. Once I had that cut to the right size, I then used my Gorilla super glue, and I'm adding that to the back of the resin casting and going to glue that in position in the center. Once the lavender was secured in place, I also added some glue to the back of the bee and glued that down. To hold the backing in place, I did add a little bit of super glue to the back section of the frame so that the design would be flush with the back. And here's a look at our finished project. I love how this turned out. It really is amazing that you can take some castings and the beautiful Paint Couture products and transform something very plain into a beautiful artwork for your home. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of the videos from the Paint Couture creative team. Thanks for watching.